Time has stopped. Monsters roam the silence. And deep within a frozen city, destiny waits to be awakened. Welcome, everyone, to the very first chapter of The City Frozen in Time. I'm your narrator, and in this series, I'll bring you into the heart of the story, one chapter at a time. So sit back and relax, and let the adventure begin. Chapter 1. Adrian stumbled over the wine barrels lining the wall of the tavern. He cursed under his breath, face twisted into a pained wince. He clutched his side as he lurched forward, sparing a single glance behind him. Damn it! They were still on his heels. Steeling his nerves, he lunged toward the wall and jumped, using the cracks he knew were there to propel himself to the top. "Stop right there! You're under arrest! Resisting will only add to your sentence!" He peered down the rooftop and grinned at the group of guards looking up at him with sneers and glares that would have gutted him if looks could kill. Yeah, how about no? Seriously, he didn't know why they had chased him this once. He didn't do anything wrong. Yes, true, he had sold an old artifact to the Boleyn heir, but he clearly remembered never stating the old thing was still functional. It was a relic, for God's sake. It wasn't his fault that the naive young master had thought otherwise. He was innocent. For once in his life, Adrian hadn't scammed the fool out of his precious credits. He wasn't responsible for whatever his clients thought. Another group of guards exited the tavern, a ladder in hand. Damn it! Adrian cursed loudly. Why couldn't they leave him alone? Didn't they have a job to do? Any other criminal to apprehend? Not that Adrian was a criminal, mind you. He was the most honest citizen of Valia. It wasn't his fault that the good old governor had, for some inexplicable reasons, outlawed the majority of business deals. How was a person supposed to live in this everlasting freeze? Adrian cursed as his feet slid over the frozen roof, his arms flailing as he stopped an inch from the edge. He bit into the tender side of his cheek as his wound protested the jarring movement. He could hear the gird as they stumbled over the ladder, yelling at him to stop if he wanted to still keep his life. Who are they kidding? His life would be forfeit as soon as his feet stepped onto prison grounds, especially with his track record of illegal business activities. His face twisted as he glimpsed the end of the building. He either got down, which wasn't ideal, as other guards might have chased him from the ground, or he jumped across to the other building. None of the choices was appealing. The first was certain to end in his arrest. The second spelled doom for his injury. He could already feel lightheaded from all the precious blood his poor body had parted with. He gritted his teeth as he readied himself for another shock of pain. Better pain than death. But as his feet lifted the solid stone, blind light shone overhead. Adrian lifted his gaze at the gray sky, his mind momentarily forgetting his half-jump. Light, the brightest light Adrian had ever seen, was descending from the sky, careening its way through the veil, lighting it aflame. For a split second, then making its way down towards the mountains to the north of the city. The light was gone as quickly as it had appeared. Adrian sprinted away, ignoring the jabbing pain at his side and the warmth seeping through his shirt. Whatever had distracted the guards had his eternal gratitude. Without sparing the sky, nor the guards, a second glance, he fled toward his hidden safe house. His safe house, if it could be called that, was at the outskirts of the city, hidden amongst the hills of ice and snow. His small, two-room building was a distance away from the forest that surrounded the city. No one in their right mind would venture this far from civilization, not without the right gear and supplies. Well, no one except Adrian, that was. But Adrian was never anyone. No, he was always an oddball, an exception to the rule. Following the rules had never appealed to him. The last time he had followed an order to the letter had been years ago, his mother's fear-stricken face and his father's hardened expression the last thing he saw before his old life ended, buried under piles of snow, and the new Adrian emerged. He had been a child then, a small, snooty, dumb thing, shaking with cold and fear, tearful eyes searching for help amongst the icy faces of the adults staring down at him with cold, unfeeling eyes. Adrian rubbed his gloved hands, blowing some hot air into the thin fabric, then tucked them under his armpits. He watched the gray sky as his feet trudged onto the sea of snow before him. Without the city's heating system, the fields beyond the stony walls were lifeless and barren. Even the bare husks that surrounded the walls couldn't retain their colors, despite some of them nodding and twisting around themselves, growing in a reclined line, reaching for warmth instead of the fake frozen sky. Adrian huffed as he dislodged his feet that dug a bit too deep into the snow. He could feel water clog around the protective layer inside his boot. He should hurry to his safe house, lest hypothermia steal his toes. He had seen many black toes and fingers to count, and he would loathe to part with his precious limbs. It would put a wench into his business procedures, something he wasn't willing to risk. People gotta eat and stuff. He took another cautious step before stopping, his gaze turning to the mountain peak visible in the distance. He wondered what that thing was. While it wasn't strange to have things, living things, cross through the veil that enclosed their city, he had never seen something so bright. No, he didn't think it was a living creature. How could a living creature glow and radiate like the stars up in the sky he had read years ago in his father's study did at night? But whatever it was bound to be quite valuable. Who knew? He could fetch quite the price for it. Nah, just kidding. He wasn't suicidal. Getting up to the mountain was akin to stabbing yourself in the neck, except stabbing yourself would be less painful and less lengthy. No one was foolish enough to risk it, except that Adrian was the most foolish of them all. It took him a while to get to the foot of the mountain. He had to get to the safe house, gather his supplies, change his boots, and put on some sturdy clothes that could withstand the freezing cold of the mountain, then head through the barren plain while keeping away from the roaming monsters. But he was sure he would get there before the city guards even got the okay to start the expedition. That was the downside of the bureaucratic world. He would be back home with his treasure long before they reached the impact site. The higher he got, the colder it got. Adrian tugged his jacket around his torso. The dark strands that had escaped the confines of his hat had long since frozen solid, covered in a thin coat of ice. He huffed, the white mist floating over his face. It better be worth it, or he would hurl the thing down the mountain. Or better yet, he would throw it outside the veil. Now that it had crossed to this side, the time seal must have already taken hold of it. He would enjoy the damn thing's fast track to ruin once it made it to the other side. As he suspected, the impact site was devoid of any guards. He was the first to arrive at the scene. There was a crater where the thing had fallen, with thick mist wafting from the hole. Adrian slowly approached, careful with his steps. The impact might have shaken the whole mountain foundation. Dying from a landslide, or worse, being buried under tons of snow, wasn't on his agenda. He cursed as his goggles were obscured the closer he got. Infuriated, he shoved the damn thing off his face and blinked his eyes open, fighting the sting that came with the thick smoke. What he saw nearly sent his heart into cardiac arrest. Down in the crater, right in the middle, wasn't a treasure from the other side of the veil. It wasn't meteorite debris or space debris from some old relic up in the sky. No, it was worse. What fell from the sky wasn't an object, it was a living creature. At least Adrian hoped she was still alive. He didn't want to have a corpse on his hands. His schedule was fully booked, thank you very much. He didn't want to add a burial to his tasks. Adrian stared at the impossibility before him. For what descended from the sky was a girl. A teal-haired girl with shimmering robes like he expected the stars in the night to be. What fell to earth was a being from beyond the sky. And that was Chapter 1 of The City Frozen in Time. If you enjoyed the journey so far, don't forget to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for the next chapter. Thank you for listening, and remember, in a world frozen in time, even silence has a story.